Hello, and welcome to Fit Lifting Baddie podcast, where we get physically, mentally, and financially fit. Today, we have one of my good friends, Trevor Shields, who is a CFP. Me and Trevor, we go way back in the gym, working out at GR City gym here in Michigan, Grand Rapids. And we just love to have conversations about finance and how to just prepare ourselves for the future. And today, me and Trevor, we want to embrace you in this conversation about interest rates and investing and what that looks for us as millennials. So Trevor, can you talk to me and the audience about interest rates? Right.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me on. Excited to be here again. But yeah, let's talk about interest rates. It's an important thing that's going on right now. Everybody knows that interest rates are rising. People are out there trying to buy homes and things like that, and it plays an impact for a lot of people. And so yeah, like what is an interest rate, right? Like what are interest rates? What do they mean? And so there are different types of interest. First, we're going to talk about interest that you owe, and I know that's not the good interest, right, Kyra?
Yeah, no.
Obviously, yeah. So we'll talk about that first, and then we'll talk about interest that you earn, right? So we're going to talk about investing, so you can earn interest.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we owe it, and that sucks, especially when it's more. So we'll talk about that first. So yeah, interest rate, what that means in terms of owing interest rates. Obviously, the most common example is buying a home, and you and I have talked about buying a home so many times, right? And
now might not be the best time, right?
I mean, it depends, right? Like if you need to buy a home and that's your situation, you should buy a home, because at the end of the day, if it's a long-term decision, you're not looking to make money off of it, right? You're looking for a home to live in, potentially with your family or in a new area or whatever. But yeah, that's the most common example, because that's what everybody wants to do, is buy a home. And so obviously, if you purchase a home and you don't buy it outright, you have to get a mortgage. And with that comes an interest rate. And so they change all the time, pretty like daily, really. And so what the interest rate means is just, so if you have a house that's worth $200,000, you might buy only $20,000 of it, right? You might only put $20,000 of the $200,000, and then the bank or the mortgage company or whoever loans you the rest of the money. They'll say, okay, well, we'll give you the rest of this $180,000, but you have to pay it back to us with interest, right? And so whatever that interest amount is accrues on your loan from the day that it starts. It accrues until you pay the loan off, essentially. And most of the time you have a fixed interest rate. There are such thing as variable interest rates, but don't do that. That's the best advice. Get a fixed rate.
Well, I thought they're good. I heard that I could get like a 0% interest rate for the first year. Like, what do you mean? That's like awesome, isn't it?
No, doesn't that sound so good? I know. So, I mean, yeah, that can be useful, because those aren't offers on homes. You don't see the mortgage company.
Oh, it seems like you cut out a little bit. Seems like you went mute.
It says my internet.
Oh, I think we can hear you now. So go ahead.
Okay.
Continue, please.
Sorry.
No worries.
My internet connection's poor, apparently. Can you hear me? I'm good.
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry. So yeah, like we were saying, with interest rates, they change all the time. And you said the 0% interest, right? Or the variable interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times that's for like buying like a TV or a car or something like that. And it's actually feasible for you to pay off that thing in the 0% interest time frame. And so that can be advantageous, right? If you are going to pay it off within the 0% time frame, and then the loan is done, that's advantageous. But if you aren't going to, and the loan interest kicks in at the end of that period, it's going to be much higher, more difficult for you to pay off, for sure. So it can be good, it can be bad. So, but when it comes to a house, you don't get that option, right? Day one, you have most people do a 30-year mortgage, some people do a 15-year mortgage. But as soon as you start that, the interest kicks in on your loan, right? And so for a little while recently, interest rates were really low, and it was a really good thing. So people were buying homes and getting things on loan because interest rates were so low. And it simply just means that the payment that you have to make is going to be lower, because less of it is going to be interest, right? So as the interest rate increases, the payment that you have to make on this loan becomes higher because you have to pay more total interest over the life of the loan. And so when periods of it, when interest is low, it's easier for people to go get loans, essentially, or more cost effective for them to go get loans. So they do that for a long period of time. But then after we do that for a really long period of time, the federal government and the central banks don't have as much money to loan out anymore. So what they do is they start raising interest rates, because what that does is it discourages people from taking loans as much as they had been in the past, because they're going to be more expensive. And it's called a tight money policy is what we call it. But the reason why we do that is because interest rates aren't supposed to be low all the time, just like how home values aren't supposed to be going up all the time, and the stock market's not supposed to be going up all the time.
I thought we want the markets to go up.
You do. Yeah, you definitely do. But the goods, the ups in the market and the swings are, the downs are necessary in order to create that, essentially. What happens, with the stock market is, when everything's going good and well in the stock market, companies begin, and the government is loaning money out a lot, so people are buying these new companies' goods and services all the time. And then when we come to a recession in our economy, which is a natural occurrence, we stop buying those things that we used to take out on loan, and like the excess goods and things like that. And those companies that started or formed in a really, really, profitable time, they may close their doors and they may shut down. And that's what happens during times right now, right? And people are being laid off and companies aren't able to sustain because the Americans aren't purchasing goods as much. And it's necessary, unfortunately. There can't just be good all the time. I know it feels great when things are going good all the time, but a lot of this is necessary. And so, yeah, like we got a little bit off track and interest rates for sure. But now that this is happening, interest rates are rising, right? And
so
it's
everything like connected to each other. It's not like, housing market is separate, stock market is separate. Like they all intertwine within each other. Like
they are all separate things, but a lot of them intertwine with each other. A lot of the stock market has real estate companies inside of it, right? The stock market has mortgage companies like Quicken Loans is one of the most familiar ones, right? Quicken Loans is a part of the stock market, and all the other mortgage companies and all the other real estate companies out there are a part of it. So they do work separately, the housing market and the stock market, and the interest rate markets and things like that, but they certainly affect each other, right? So yeah, like I said, interest rates, interesting. Like I said, it's currently a rising interest rate environment where, it's still okay. You talked about, it's a bad time, to buy a house. That it's just opinionated, essentially. So, I'm in the position, I think both of us, we've talked about it before. I know, talking about buying houses and when is the right time and should I do it now? And, every time I talk about it with people, the best time to do it was a year ago or 2 years ago. Yeah, exactly. Right. And that's what everybody said 2 years ago. 2 years before that. Right. So if that's always going to be the answer, right, then you just buy a house when buying a house is right for you. Because a lot of go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, is there ever a cap that interest rates will stop at? Is there a ceiling, or it could keep going? Because right now it's starting to look a little scary.
Technically, I mean, yes, it could keep raising. I don't think it will continue to just keep raising forever. That's, not the point. The federal government has control over that. The reason why interest rates rise is because the federal government raises them on purpose. I mean, highest interest rates before were double digits. So, and then some, right? So that's a possibility. I don't really know. I'm not much of an economist, so I can't weigh in on that. But yeah, I mean, they could certainly go higher. They are right now. They're continuing to, which to me is okay. I get, if it's not exactly deterring me from buying a home, simply because one of the things I want to say about changing interest rates all the time is that a few years ago, people purchased their homes and their interest rate was maybe like around 2 or 3%, really low. And if you were to now, it's like 6 to 7%, like significantly higher, right? So the people who bought their houses 2 to 3 years ago aren't refinancing their loans. Obviously know what a refinance is.
But for those who don't know, can you just like explain that a little bit?
Yep. So to refinance a loan means to change the initial terms of the loan. So you get a loan, it's for X number of years for X number of interest. So just for example, it could be 10 years with 5% interest per year. And that's in 2010. Then maybe a few years go by and it's 2012 or 2013, and the federal government's decided to decrease interest rates. And at that point in time, you could, if you were to start a new loan, get one for a lower amount. So what that loan provider does for you is gives you the option to refinance the loan, meaning let's do it with different terms. So we'll do it for that same year length, 10 more years, but we'll give you 4% interest now, which is 1% lower than 5, which saves you the total amount of interest on the loan, saves you money. That's what a refinance is. So people will do that often, especially with their homes. And so if you were to get a home right now and you were, at 7% interest, I don't believe that interest rates will stay above 7% for the rest of your life. I don't. Yeah. So, or for the entirety of your loan, which is 30 years. So even if you bought a house now, my belief is that, within a relative amount of time of owning that home, you probably would be able to refinance your home for a lower rate, right? So it's not like you're forced to pay this high interest on your home for the rest of the loan. It's not necessary. You are allowed to refinance in the future. You may lose a little bit of money right now, but it's relative, Kara. It's really all relative, honestly.
So there just seems like one good benefit of interest rate. Are there any other benefits of having either an increased interest rate or a decrease in interest rates?
A definite decrease in interest rates is good. So obviously, in terms of raising interest rates, it looks horrible on paper, right? It doesn't feel good. It doesn't why would we increase interest rates? This is a terrible idea. I know, I get it. The truth is that, there's a lot of things out on loan is really the best way to describe it. For a really long time, since interest rates were low, people were encouraged to go get loans. And when the economy slows down and people don't work as much and they're not making as much money and unemployment is a little higher, kind of what we've been experiencing as a nation, it's harder for people to pay these loans, really. That's the first thing that people stop paying for is their loans, like their credit card debts and these things like that. And so, that's not you, I know that, and that's not me.
No,
but that's a lot of people. I know, and that's a lot of people out there, unfortunately, and they default on these loans and they go to collections and they don't get paid, and that doesn't help the general American economy, to be honest with you. The point of getting your loan was for you to actually pay it off, right? And I know that happens a lot, but at the end of the day, so the increasing of the interest rates is really to just deter people who may not actually be gonna pay these loans off to take them in the first place, which helps the rest of us good citizens in America who do pay our bills and our interest and things like that. So at the end of the day, the government has an eye on the fact that this is happening and we need to put an end to it, essentially.
So definitely. Right? So it's getting those yellow flashes. It's not like the red, stop. It's take caution.
Yeah.
You might not want to do it.
Correct.
A lot of things happen in people's lives. So definitely knowing that it's a caution and not the big old red sign that says stop, okay? Don't do it. Understanding what that light means. It might help people to better understand the economy and the direction we're going and the direction they should probably go to better secure their financial situation.
For sure. Yeah. I know it's hard. I know, when these periods of time happen, it's harder to save money or it's harder to make money and things like that. And I know, and I get it, it's hard. But there's always, there's a rhyme and a reason to it all. And there's simple things that you can do, which this is a perfect segue to talk about investing right now. There's some really simple things that you can do.
ahead.
There's really simple things that you can do now, and no matter how much money you have, because what I'll tell you, I for the company that I work for, the minimum investment amount is only $25 a month. And I think anybody, you can scrape that together, right? And so there's easy ways to invest. You can do it on your own with as little or as less money as I'm mentioning here.
So
go ahead.
An average person could have $100, and based on what you know about investing, let's talk about how we should invest that $100. Just your personal opinion.
Yeah. In the first conversation that you and I had together, you and I talked about the order of operations. Remember that? PEMDAS? Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah, it's important. It's good. It's a perfect it's a perfect example. So that little order of operations, to me, before you were to invest, before you to save your money, if and this is a precursor to everything that we just said. If you are in debt and you're not paying your bills and your credit card debts and your loans, all of the money that you make and you can save and can scrape together needs to do that. You need to pay your loans off. You need to do those things. So if you had $100 to invest and you had a bunch of loans that you weren't paying off, that's what you should do first. But let's assume that we're talking about a person who is in a situation to invest. Okay. And what that means to me is, one, you're paying off all of your debts adequately, and two, you have a substantial savings, right? So we're going to talk about savings versus investing, right? If you have $100, should I save it? Should I invest it? Should I pay debts off with it, right? We'll talk a little bit about that. So to start, we'll talk about saving. So let's say my first default answer, if you had $100, what would you do with it? I would tell you to save it. And what I would tell you to save it in is, well, first, everybody knows a checking account or a savings account. Clearly, most everyone has one of those. And so for your checking and savings account, just know that this, Kyra, you don't really make any money off of it, right?
Well, there should be a precursor, because there's a difference between a credit union savings account and a bank, like Chase's type of checking and savings account. I just had to put that out there because some people just don't know.
Yep. And I'll do that real quick. So like you said, banks, credit unions, at a bank, you can do a savings, you can do a checking, you can do a business savings and checking. There's a lot of different options you can do at a bank, but a bank is not a credit union. They're different. And you'll know that something is a credit union because it literally says credit union in the name. And so for banks really don't give you any interest. So we were talking about interest that we owe before. Now we're talking about interest that you earn. And so the good interest, I know, exactly. And so the bank doesn't give you much earned interest. It's usually like 0.01 or 0.1%, which is literally nothing. It's pennies. And so credit unions work a little bit differently. Credit unions have what they call, credit unions also have savings and checkings accounts. Just know that too. And not all credit union saving and checking accounts offer you interest earned like the bank does, but they do offer ones that are like high interest bearing checking and savings accounts, right? And some of those can be up to 3 to 4% on the money that you have in there. And so what I would say for anybody that's in that situation, if you are already banking at a credit union or you're looking for a bank to have all of your accounts at and maybe one bank for you, look into a credit union, and those will be options for you. I bank at a bank, so I don't have that. I don't have a high interest bearing check. And it's really just because of the relationship that I have with the person that works at the bank. Honestly, it's a friend of mine, so that's why I go to that bank. So also so we talk about these savings account and checking account and thing like that. A lot of them serve a lot of purposes, right? Like some people have bill paying accounts. Normally your checking account is where the money comes into and the money goes out, right? That you pay your bills with it. Yep, exactly. So that's what most people do. Let's just assume that's what everybody does. They have a checking account, and that's where the money flows in and out of. And hopefully there's always money in your checking account, right? And if there isn't always
no negative,
right.
No overdraft fee.
Right. If you don't have money in your checking account, you need to save that $100 that we talked about, no doubt about it. And also there's some things that you probably need to reevaluate. We can talk all day on that, right? So let's just assume you always have money in your checking account, and then you have a savings account. And so the checking account is just a bill paying account. We're not talking about emergency savings with your checking account. That's just something that money comes in and money goes out of and flows all the time. Then we have a savings account, like the account separate from your from your checking, that I would consider your emergency savings, right? So your emergency savings is clearly for emergencies. And like I said, it should be a few $1,000s in my opinion. And how many more $1,000s than that it needs to be, to each their own, simply because some people make a lot of money and just invest a lot of it and don't like to keep a lot in savings. Some people like to keep more in their savings because they have a purchase to make. Personally, I don't have a home and I would like to buy one and would like to have the ability to buy a home whenever I please. And so I have more money in the bank than I would normally, most likely, because I'm going to buy a house soon. That makes sense, right?
For sure.
And so that to me is what the checking and savings is. The checking and savings is for the bill paying all the time and for very short-term purchases. So obviously, like if you had to buy something in 6 months, whether it's a ring, a car, a house, a TV, to make a down payment on this, to send your kids to go to school at this new place, whatever it is, if it's happening in your life in a couple years or a year or something like that, you want to have that money in the bank. You want it to be in your checking or your savings account, and you don't want it to invest it because, we'll talk a lot about investing for sure. But if you needed it right now, like had you invested it last year and you needed it right now, 25% of it would be gone and you would not be happy about that, right? So you don't want to play that game with money that you feel like you need in the short term, right? So the money that you need in the short term is your savings. Money that you need in the longer term is investments. Okay, so that's like kind of how I differentiate the two. Make sense? Can you hear me, Kara?
Yeah, I can. That definitely
okay, cool.
That definitely
all right, I just want to make sure.
And me personally, I do banks and credit unions, so I have experience with both. And
yeah,
I would say I definitely, just like you were saying, I use my checking and my saving with my credit union, but I don't know how Trevor feels about this. I do have a credit card, but let me preface this by saying I do pay it off every month.
Yeah. I have 3 credit cards. Yeah. And I pay them all off every month. Yeah. So I think credit is a great thing. So credit it falls into that category of like interest owed, right? But you can avoid the interest owed if you pay the balance off, right? And that's a wonderful thing. I think you should have a credit card. Like I said, I have 3. They all serve a different purpose for sure. And so yeah, like I said, having a credit card is great. But like I said, if you are in the situation where we talked about where there isn't money in your checking account and you have a credit card balance that needs to be paid, like that's tough. There's some things you gotta reevaluate. It's probably some things that you would need to cut out in your life and things like that.
Responsible.
Right. Just being a little bit more
responsible. That can get you the whole, like a lot.
I know.
But also great benefits depending on whoever you decide to bank with.
True. Yep. Agreed. And so yeah, like I said, now that we know that if you had $100 and you needed to pay bills and your checking account was in the red every once in a while and you didn't have a few $1,000s in your bank, you should save that money. You should just put it in the bank, lock it, pocket, we're saving it, right? But now we're in a situation where we do have all those things taken care of.
We're in the green, yes. Yeah,
let's do it.
Now? Let's go.
We got $100. What are we doing with it, right? So
what's the mall?
I know, right? Yeah. You can still go to the mall, right? But like, let's say like you're going to use $2 at the mall and you're going to save and invest 98 of it. We'll put it that way. How about that? And so with the $98 that you're gonna save here, for me, a thing to always be aware of when you're investing is if normally when you make money investing at all, no matter how you do it, you have to pay taxes. That's how that works, right? Like that's how the American economy works. When you make money, you got to pay taxes. And so just know that when we invest and we make money, we are, most of the time, I'll talk about how you're not, but we're liable for taxes, right? So that's something to be considered all the time when we're investing. So because that's the case, a way that I prefer that people invest their money long term is for retirement, right? Do you have a retirement account, Kara?
I do actually, and
Okay.
I know a lot of companies, they offer that to their employees. So I think you're probably going to get into maybe 2 or more types of investments that you can do for retirement.
Yeah, let's do it. You're right on. Okay. So most people are familiar with retirement investing because their employer gives them a retirement option. The most common retirement option is a 401k, right? People know that term and are familiar with that. If you work for like a nonprofit organization or something like that, it might be called a 403b. It's similar. But what happens is your company withholds a little bit of money out of your paycheck and puts it in an account for you, and then they take the same amount of money, hopefully most of the time, and they put from themselves and they put it in that same account and they invest it for you for your retirement. So you can stop working someday and you'll have money, right? So that's how a retirement account works, and it's invested hopefully normally in the stock market, right? And that is a long-term investment because it's a very simple concept. Retirement for someone like you and I, right? We're under 30, right? It's a long way away. It's like 30 years from now, right? So hopefully it's a little maybe shorter, right? If we do it the right way and we save and we have a good financial advisor. But like I said, it's a long way away, right? So if you're going to be investing for retirement, you must know that you don't need this money until you retire, right? That's the point, right? And I get that that's a long time away, but that means you need to be in a situation where you don't need to save any more money, right? Like you must be saving money if you don't really need this money for a really long time, right? It's a tough situation to get in, but everybody can do that, and everybody should be doing that if they have that 401k option, right? So the nice thing about these retirement accounts that I'm talking about is the money that you make inside of these retirement accounts every year, right? You don't have to pay taxes on it, which is a wonderful thing. Saving tax money is great, no matter how you do it. And so when we investing for retirement, in my opinion, is the best thing that you can do, the best way that you can save your money, right? There are ways to invest your money outside of retirement, and I'll talk about those too. But we're going to talk right now about saving for retirement because it's the most important, in my opinion. So
going to the casino and investing that way, that's not a good way for making
It's gambling.
No, but I mean, if I make the money, then like I could just invest it and get interest on my money from the casino, right?
You don't get interest from your money on the casino. You get winnings if you win from the casino. If you do make winnings from the casino, you got to pay taxes on that too, right?
Wait, what? I thought I could just take my winnings and then use it and put it in my 401k, and now I have more money for my investment for my retirement.
You can gamble and make money and pay taxes on it and put that money in your retirement account if you want to. I don't condone that. I don't think you should do that. I think you should just work, have a good job, something that you're passionate about, make money, and put that in the retirement account. Your company will do it for you. It's easy. All you have to do is say yes and just opt in. And so they'll save a little bit of your money off of every paycheck. You won't even notice it. They'll do it every month for the rest of your life. And they'll also give you free money for doing that. They'll say, hey, thanks for putting, So the way that 401k works is they'll ask you, hey, Kyra, will you put 5% of the income that you make this month and every month into an account that we're going to invest for you in the stock market, and eventually you won't have to work anymore. Will you do that? And you say yes. That's okay. Thank you so much for doing that. What we're going to do is give you 5% of the same thing, right? We're going to match it, is what they call it. We're going to give you that money too. And we're going to put it in the account, hopefully, so you can retire even sooner. And you're going to be like, wow, you're a great company, and I'm going to work for you for the rest of my life. And that's how.
Sign my life away. There you go. I'm here. I'm yours.
So, exactly. People who are working for bigger corporations normally have that as an option. There are different types of employer-sponsored retirement plans, is what we call them, meaning you are sponsored by your employer for this retirement plan. That's essentially what that means. Some people are self-employed, right? I am, but you don't get one if you're self-employed. You are the employer, so you have to offer yourself one. And what those are called is individual retirement accounts, IRAs. People are familiar with the term IRA. So just like a 401k, IRAs have the same tax status, meaning the money that you make in them, you don't have to pay taxes on. But the difference is that you don't get free money from your employer in an IRA. There's no match in an IRA, anything, obviously, unfortunately. So all the money that goes into the IRA comes out of your pocket, which is okay, right? So IRAs, 401ks, pensions, people hear about all the time. They're a little less common. Yeah, I mean, they exist, but they're a lot less common. You're not, nobody that we're talking to is probably getting a pension these days. But those types of things, those are all retirement savings. And those are the best things to do. That's the best way, the best vehicle for saving your money. I say vehicle because those things are all names of accounts, account types. The investment itself, what we're actually going to be purchasing and buying as an investment is something different, right? Like you don't purchase a 401k. You have a 401k that has money in it that purchases other things. Those other things are investments, and there are a lot of different types of investments. For legal sake, I'm not allowed to go into any of them in too much detail. I'm just going to talk about what a couple different types of, So I'm just going to talk about a couple different types of investments. Some common ones that people have in their 401ks and in their IRAs. And we'll go that route. So the most common things is a mutual fund. Have you heard of a mutual fund, Kara?
I have.
Okay, right.
Can you explain it?
Do you want, I was going to say, do you want to try?
Oh, you're so good at it. I think I'll just keep letting you go.
I bet you really know this. I bet you really know this. Okay. So it's a mutual fund. A mutual fund has the word mutual in it, right? And so what that means is that a company, an investment company, offers an investment called a mutual fund that a bunch of people are capable of buying, right? So just like the stock on a stock market has a price, you can buy a share, right? So if you want to buy one share of a certain stock, they tell you what the price is and you can buy that. Mutual funds work the same way. They have a price, and if you want to buy a share, they'll tell you how much they cost. And so what the mutual fund is you are investing your money in a fund, and the fund is made up of a bunch of different individual stocks. So some common ones, like this is a good example, a science and technology mutual fund. What that would mean is, so there are individual science and technology stocks out there like Google, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Netflix, right? Like the obviously ones that you're most familiar with, right? And many, many others. So instead of having to buy one share of all those different companies on your own, it would be really expensive. And it would be really hard to do and for you to manage on your own. What you do is you buy a science and technology mutual fund. And inside of that mutual fund, there is a bunch of percentages of individual stocks. So you might buy a fund and it has 5% Apple, 2% Amazon, 1% Google, 3% Netflix, something like that, around those lines. And that would be broken up into obviously a total of 100%. But you would be investing in many different companies for a lower cost than it would cost you to buy them all separately. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Wonderful.
Because that would be individual stocks.
Yeah. So what I do for a living is not individual stocks. What most people are doing in their 401k, in their IRA, is not individual stocks. It's mutual funds. We call them diversified investments because it isn't just one company, it is many companies. Even though you're buying, one mutual fund, that one mutual fund is made up of maybe honestly sometimes hundreds of different individual stocks, right? So it's diversified, which means it's safer, because if you own one share of Apple and God forbid anything were to happen to Apple, I don't really foresee that, but if Apple no longer existed, you lose all your money, right? Like that, you lose all the money. And that's the point, right? We don't want to overinvest in any one particular thing, because as we've seen in the past, like any one company can do poorly and things can happen to any one company. So we don't do that, right? So mutual funds, that's a really common thing. There are other names for things that are diversified investments that are similar to mutual funds. Some people call them index funds. ETFs are exchange traded funds. And so those are the types of things that you want to be investing in your retirement accounts, in my opinion, because they're highly diversified. They come in all different shapes and forms. And because they're so available to the public in so many different ways, they're pretty inexpensive to do, right? And so I'll say that's probably the most important thing that anyone would need to know when it came to retirement investing with those particular types of investments. But there are different types of investments that you can have inside of your retirement accounts. Stocks versus bonds. We'll talk a little bit about I-bonds here, Kyra. And so essentially stocks versus bonds. Stock, we've talked about before. You buy a share of a stock, which means a partial ownership in a company. If you buy a share of Apple, you own a share of Apple, and you own part of their company. If they were to ever dissolve, they essentially would pay you, they would always pay you the price for that stock. Bonds work a little bit different. They are you loaning money to a company. So companies or governments or cities, they'll raise money for projects like roads and schools and all this type of stuff. So they'll say, okay, if you give us some money, we'll give you this certificate. You remember savings bonds when we were kids?
Listen,
did you ever have
my mom asked for those when I was born, and what happened was you might pay like $5 and I'm saying the wrong, mature at a certain point. And they do collect interest. So I was able to use some of that to pay on my classes going to college.
There you go.
And I do have to say something, preface something, that these type of investments that we're talking about, and you, Trevor, correct me if I'm wrong, you can't do this at a credit union, but you could potentially do it at a bank, correct? Like Chase.
Correct.
Or Fidelity. That's someplace this is not sponsored. I do love them. This is not sponsored. But hey, Fidelity, if you want to sponsor me, I'm right here.
You're very correct. Yes. These investments are available at banks. They are not at credit unions. And so, but then these investments are also available with companies like you said, Fidelity, right? Fidelity isn't a bank. Fidelity is, it's a brokerage essentially. So you can, open a Fidelity brokerage account or an IRA through Fidelity. You can't get a 401k through Fidelity. Like the 401k is very specifically something that is offered through an employer. So you must have a job where your employer offers a 401k in order to get one. You can't have one other than that. But for the other retirement investments like IRAs,
the traditional, and then you have the Roth. So, and that goes back to also taxes, which we love to pay, right? Right? We love those taxes.
We need to pay them. We don't love to pay them. Yeah.
So you can pay them now or you can pay them later, depending on whatever tax bracket, best for you. Yeah.
And so, I'm not a tax accountant. I need to preface everything I say about tax.
Neither am I.
I am not a tax accountant.
But I do have both, so that's why I just mentioned it for anyone who is like, oh, IRA, I thought there was just one. No, there's definitely diversity in there. So we can just put a period on that. And if you want to know more, go ahead and do your research or ask questions, and we can definitely go and find some more information about that or point you in that direction.
Yes. So I'll wrap up here a little bit when it comes to the retirement investing, because beyond these diversified investments that I've talked about, I don't really condone too much other types of investing, right? I'm a financial professional, and
your investment, so you can be very risky. So let's just
you can be very risky, and you can be very safe, but you can also be aggressive and not be very risky is another thing, right? So for a lot of the advice that I give, I usually encourage younger people to be more aggressive in their nature. That doesn't mean that they're not going to be diversified, right? So there are ways to be aggressive, like I said, and not be so risky. Like it would be aggressive and risky to buy one stock of Apple and to only buy Apple stock, I think. But it would also, it would also be considered aggressive to buy only a science and technology mutual fund, because there are a lot of different types of mutual funds out there. But it's well diversified. There are a lot of different companies that are involved in this science and technology mutual fund. Apple is one of them, but there's many other ones. So, like I said, you can be aggressive by investing in companies that are quote unquote risky, but you don't have to take all the risk by investing in just one or just a few of them, right? So like I said, that's where the help of a professional can come in and guide you. And that's what I do. But like I said, for the retirement investing, there are many different types of investments that are available. The advice that I give to my clients and just generally is that there are a couple basic investing principles. The first one is diversification. It's really that simple. And I know that that's a buzzword and everybody like, oh, you got to diversify your portfolio. Like, no, you really do. You really do need to diversify your portfolio. It's an important thing. And really just all that means is that you need to invest in a lot of things, in a lot of different things, because yes, there are certain companies that have their moment or their time to shine, and they rise a lot and people make a lot of money and you hear these stories, but like it really doesn't happen as often as you think. And most of these people, they'll get lucky with these sorts of things. If you're going to do some long-term investing, money that you're counting on to be there when you retire, I'm pretty sure you want to, diversify a little bit. And be aggressive, but not be too risky, right? So my caveat to anyone in terms of their whatever investment account that you have, just diversify, spread things out a little bit. You know what I mean?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But with that being said, back to our $99 where
98. I gave you $2 for them all. Yeah.
Yeah. So with your caveat, what else are we doing with this? Because we're diversifying, paid our bills, our bank account is set. So we put some in our retirement fund. So how much should we put in there?
There's a rule of thumb, and we kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier when I was talking to you about the percentage that you put away and the percentage that your company gives you. A common 401k contribution percentage is 5%, and then your company will give you 5%, right? That's a very common one because that equals 10%. So the rule of thumb for retirement investing is to save 10% of your income, right? So if you're saving 10% of your income towards retirement and you have all your bills paid and you're paying off your debts effectively, you're paying off your credit card bill, you have your checking accounts in the green, right? And you're saving 10%, like you're doing what you need to do. Beyond that, there are other reasons why people save money, right? So like, you might be investing 10% of your income, but maybe you need to start saving the rest of that because you need to buy a house in a year or two, or you're going to have children with your spouse and suddenly your expenses are like for sure going to go up, right? Like you're going to have a child. So your expenses are going to go up. You're like, well, we're going to need to save money because we're expecting a child. And like, we also are going to need to send that child to college potentially, or buy them a car or send them to grade school or something. So like as things happen in your life, there will be like shorter term goals that you need to save your money for while you're still investing for retirement, right? Like that kind of just works like a wheel. Like if you can get to yourself to the point where you're making enough money and saving enough money in not just the bank, but in retirement on a regular basis, then that's when you can create these goals. You can have whatever goal you want, right? Like obviously not having money kind of like it deters people from doing a lot of things, right? But so yeah, then you can kind of just, make your goals around your life. Like, like I'm going on a trip. I'm going to be 30 soon, Kyra. I'm turning 30 in like a month here. Well, maybe like 3 weeks. But I'm going to Cancun to celebrate with a bunch of my friends that are also turning 30 around the same time, right? And like, I saved the money up to go on this trip to Cancun, right? Like that's what I do.
You made sure your account was in the green. You paid what debts you needed, made sure whatever bills you had were being deducted. Then with your extra money that you had, you made sure that was going into your retirement fund that you started for yourself since you're self-employed. And then after that, you did goals. So after goals, whatever money you set aside for your goals, now, instead of probably spending that money in the beginning at the mall, now that money we have left over, I can go and party it up, right? You can go and
go to the
that
mall.
money for Cancun.
Go to the mall. Yep, go to Cancun, buy some shoes, buy some nice food. And I do those things, like I definitely do. Like, and I always have. Like, I've always made room in my budget and like made sure I save for fun things, of course. Like,
you don't just live super,
I'm going to Cancun. Of course I do fun things. Yeah.
Below your means, like you don't have to live super, super below your means to have money to do things.
No, it's crazy. I know. I don't shop like designer brand. Like I'm clipping coupons with Meyer all the time. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's a million ways to save money, right? And you just gotta be smart about it. It's I could talk for the rest of the night on ways to save money, Kyra. I can't do that.
We talked about that before, but I think that this brings us to a good point where we now know if we do have $100, the best ways in which we should go about investing. And on that note, if there's any other questions about any of the, go ahead.
I was gonna say we did a really good job. We talked a lot about good stuff today. I was glad that we covered all that. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, I mean, I know some things come up for you. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I could talk forever about this sort of stuff. I think if we, there's a couple topics here that I think we can expand on too. So,
okay, let's do it.
Yeah, if there's anyone out there that is interested in that, we can save that for a later date. I can expand upon those at a later time. Like I said, there's a couple pieces in there that I feel like I could totally talk more on too. But if there's interest in that, I can certainly jump back on and we can do that.
Yeah, let's graze over them really quick, and then hopefully if you guys really like having Trevor here, we can go into a deeper discussion about that so that you guys can get like some knowledge and potentially go ahead and do your own research. I am not an expert. Trevor is an expert in what he's good at.
You sound like it. Yeah.
No, I read a lot. So we both encourage you to do your own research on what works best for you. We've done our own research for ourselves, but we want to be able to be not a guidance for you, but not the guidance you have to take. Just, some words of encouragement and advice for you to
a resource of sorts.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for having me again. I appreciate this. We'll do this again for sure.
Yes, thank you so much. I do appreciate you. I feel like every time we have a conversation, I'm always learning something new. And I hope that people can take away something and be able to set themselves up for financial success, because there's so many people during this time who, they got the extra money. They might have not necessarily known the best way to utilize it to make sure that in the future they're setting themselves up for success. And we're not coming down on you if you want to go spend your money on a new car, but we're just letting you know there's better ways to it's called self-gratification. If you just hold off a little bit, I promise you in the future, you're going to set yourself up and have a great foundation for yourself and your children in the future.
Agreed. That's what we're trying to promote out here. So I appreciate it.
And I'll definitely leave Trevor's information linked in the bottom. So if you want to email him, you want to have a chat with him, be like, hey, Trevor. I love what you're saying.
Let's keep it about finance. Yeah.
No, I love what you're saying. They can go ahead and feel comfortable enough to come to you if they don't have anyone else to, and get that financial information.
I'd love to help.
Those up for success.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.